on the NOFO process this year. And then we're going to do some breakout discussion because we have now an unusual 2-year window before we have to do this again. So it's an opportunity to do some planning and some extra steps. And we want your input on how we approach it. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to show you is a very quick kind of 2024 NOFO update. Including kind of how we did the process and what the result was in terms of what we submitted. And then we'll talk about planning for 2026. So there is not going to be a NOFO cycle in 2025. And then there's going to be some breakout conversation, which the August team will help us facilitate. Okay, so here's our update. So probably a lot of you, if you've heard me talk about the NOFO before, have seen this slide. This is just kind of the overview of the incredibly complicated process that HUD makes us go through to get resources. So the Notice of Funding Opportunity comes out every year from HUD. This year it came out at the end of July. And then we have to do a local process, which is that yellow box, which goes on for about 3 months, where all the organizations that already have NOFO COC funding and all the organizations that want to get COC funding all have to put in an application that comes to the local continuum of care. And those are scored and ranked by our wonderful NOFO committee. And then once that is all done, the county, the Housing and Homelessness Group, which is the collaborative applicant, pulls all that together, so that's the blue box, and submits that all to HUD. And then we wait. And in the spring sometime we'll get the results. So today is actually the deadline for the submission to go to HUD. It's due today, October 30th. We sent it in actually on Friday the 25th, so 4 days early, woo! Which made my weekend much more pleasant than it would have been otherwise. So it is in, and we're expecting to hear probably in February or maybe later what the results are. So just a quick overview of how the COC is involved. So there's a lot of different roles that the different committees play. So strategy, funding, and compliance, which is actually, I think, the host of this agenda item. They do a lot of the sort of high level thinking about the strategic direction for how we want to use the money and how we want to approach the process. And the NOFO committee, who I mentioned, and I know some of the NOFO committee are here, is a group of folks who are non-conflicted, so they do not receive any of their organizations don't receive any of the money. They're responsible for a lot of the details. So what is the application process going to look like? What is the scoring rubric going to be? And what are the policies that govern the process? And then they also score the applications, which is a huge amount of work. So they are big heroes in my mind in the COC. And then the leadership board has some high-level oversight also of the process, and they also approve the final application that goes in. And then in the last couple of years, we've also had some specialized input come in from the Racial Equity Committee and the Youth Committee, kind of looking at the process from those lenses to recommend how to improve the process. Okay, and then this, I already covered this. So this is just our timeline from this year. The NOFO came out July 31st, and the NOFO committee met September 26th to rate and rank the projects, and the leadership board approved the list on October 10th. And then Ed gave us all a big congratulations there by putting October 25th was when we submitted it. Okay, so this is just a little overview of what does this money go to. So we get about $50 million a year into Alameda County through this funding source. So it's a lot of money. Most of it supports housing programs that already exist and already have participants in place, so tenants in existing housing projects. So a lot of the money goes into permanent supportive housing. And then there are other kinds of permanent housing projects it can support, which includes rapid rehousing, which are shorter term subsidies that then lead people to permanent housing. And then it supports a kind of housing project that only HUD could think of called Joint Transitional and Rapid Rehousing, which is a combination of a transitional program with a rapid rehousing subsidy. And then it also pays for some of the infrastructure of the continuum of care, which is the coordinated entry system and the HMIS data system. So notably, this funding source doesn't pay for any of the front end interventions. So you can't use it to pay for shelter, you can't use it to pay for services unless they're part of a housing project. You can't use it to pay for new transitional housing, and you can't use it to pay for prevention. So you need to think of it more as sort of it's a major source of funds for how people, once they've gone into the homelessness response system, how people get out of it into housing. Okay, so this is what we asked for this year. We asked for $60 million, which was the maximum we could ask for. That was our allocation from HUD, $60,310,834, and that's what we asked for. We asked for every dollar. So that included 43 projects that are renewing their grants, which adds up to just under 50 million, so 49 million and almost 50 million. We're applying for 6 new projects, which total almost $9 million. And then we are applying for the planning grant, which is an annual allocation that HUD provides, which is 1.5 million. And that one's not competitive, so that money we'll just get. Most of the rest of this is awarded competitively. So just because we're allowed to ask for 60 million doesn't mean we'll necessarily get all 60 million. And so this is just a breakdown of the renewals. So you can see of those projects we submitted, almost all of them were PSH. So 24 of the renewals were permanent supportive housing. So again, this is why a lot of the people in the permanent supportive housing, many of the folks in those projects, the tenants in those units have been in place for quite a while because permanent supportive housing is permanent. So a lot of this money is paying rent subsidies and paying for operations of housing projects that have people in place who at one time were experiencing homelessness, but now are housed. There were 6 rapid rehousing projects on the renewal list, 3 transitional housing, 2 combination transitional and rapid rehousing, and then there's 3 projects that pay for the coordinated entry system, including for integration of coordinated entry with the domestic violence system, and then there's 1 grant for the HMIS system. And then that last thing, there's 4 renewal grants through the Youth Homeless Demonstration Program, which pay for housing and other projects for youth. And those also are not competitive, so those will get automatically renewed, those 4 at the bottom. And then there were new projects, as I mentioned. 5 of them are what we call COC bonus, which means they're projects that can serve any population of people who experience homelessness. So 1 was for rapid rehousing, 3 were for this joint transitional and rapid rehousing, and 1 was for coordinated entry. And then we submitted 1 under the domestic violence bonus. And of the 6, 4 of them were from organizations that do not currently have COC funding. So they're completely new to the COC funding source, or they may have been a subrecipient in the past. So it was kind of nice to see some new folks in the mix this year. So in terms of next steps, like I said, we'll hear sometime in the spring. If you're a renewal applicant, I'm sure you want to know sooner than later. Sometimes there's a little bit of a delay with HUD announcing the results and people don't get their contracts in a timely way. So we hope we'll get results soon. And then this year, HUD's this is the first time they're rolling out this 2-year process. So everyone will get 1 year of funding, which will cover their 25-26 funding cycle, and then they'll get a renewal for a second year for covering 26-27. So there won't be a competition. So next year, people won't have to submit a local application, we won't have to score and rank. It's possible there may be some opportunities to apply for new projects next year in 2025, but HUD hasn't let us know that yet. It's going to depend a bit on whether they have any money to offer. So we won't have to do this whole process again until summer and fall of 2026. Okay, I'm just gonna stop there for a second. Any questions? Yes?
Can you explain coordinated entry, what it is, how it's funded, and what it does?
Yes, I will do my best, and then if there's anyone else here who's more of an expert on coordinated entry, they can jump in. So the coordinated entry system is required by HUD it's one of the conditions of receiving any COC funding and being in continuum of care. It's a process to manage how people access programs in the continuum of care. So you have to have a way that there's a systematized way that people who are experiencing homelessness can go to a place, either a physical place or a virtual online place, or through an outreach team to complete some process steps to get assessed and then matched to a housing program. And I believe it's still called Homestretch here, right? Or yes. Does anyone else would like to say anything about, it's managed by H&H, so I don't know if anyone from H&H wants to say anything else.
Do the people have to be in a structured setting?
No. Do you mean to access coordinated entry?
Yeah, I mean, does it apply to people living in a tent or under the freeway?
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Hi, yeah, I'm sorry, you guys, me again. I'd like to know, can you give me information about the 5 COC bonus project, bonus money?
Do you want to know who the projects were?
Yeah, it's bonus, can you explain that for me?
Oh, so what is the bonus?
Yeah.
So the bonus is the amount of money HUD allows you to ask for new projects. So they give you a kind of a limit on how many new dollars you can ask for, and ours was like just about 6 million, 5.9 million.
And that's for all of Alameda County, right?
Correct.
So is it a possibility that they could have some bonus money for the people that's living under the freeways, like the tough shed, so they could get some heat and some air conditioning? Maybe some heaters or something? Is that possible? Would that be a possibility?
I believe because the tough sheds are considered emergency shelter.
So the tough sheds are emergency shelter and they are receiving funding through HAP to be upgraded to have insulation and heat and better beds. So any of the sheds that don't currently have that are being upgraded through a different funding stream. They wouldn't qualify for this funding stream. HAP is a funding stream that does allow for upgrades to emergency shelter.
And who's supplying the funding for that?
HAP is state funding, it's right now, actually. It's like, I don't remember, right?
Homeless housing assistance prevention.
You didn't complete the question on
For coordinated entry.
Yeah, who does it? Who administers it?
So I'll give some more information on coordinated entry and then I may pass it to Alameda County's Housing and Homeless Department to give more. So coordinated entry is a process that is also mandated by HUD. It is a prioritization process. There are housing resource centers throughout the county that administer the coordinated entry system. And people can go to those agencies, so I know BACS, BOSS, Building Futures.
Urban Alchemy.
And they don't do it yet.
They were all in mine. They were all in mine.
And Covenant House all have housing resource centers. So people can go there in person during their operating hours, which can be found on Alameda County's website, as well as if you just do a search through Google, you can find the hours. You can also, there are staff there that are trained to go through the whole process with people. And through that process, you can go through housing problem solving, which is a shelter diversion program, or you can go through the crisis queue. There's also more information. I encourage you to look to Google Alameda County Coordinated Entry System. You can see all the information there. If you are not able to go in person, or you're not able to go during those hours, you can call 211, or you can call the Housing Resources Centers directly, and you can go through the process over the phone. There are also some street outreach teams. I know Operation Dignity has staff that can do coordinated entry out in the field. I just recently transitioned to the city of Alameda, and our outreach team is able to do it out in the field as well. So staff are able to come to where people are and do the process there. But that can be challenging because you don't always find people, so it's important for people to know where they can also go or who they can also call. So 211 and the actual housing resource centers, BACS, FOSS, Building Futures, and Covenant House, and EOCP and East Oakland. East Oakland Community Project. I believe it's 24 hours, yes, 211.
Is it updated in real time?
What's that?
Is it updated in real time, like the beds availability or resource availability?
I'm not sure what the question is.
Like, do they update it daily or, you know?
So the shelters update their availability daily, but just because there's a bed available and you call doesn't mean that you can get into that bed. So permanent supportive housing is run through Homestretch, through Alameda County. You have to prioritize, I wanna say the number is 80, you have to get to a certain number to even qualify for a permanent supportive housing bed. And then a bed has to come available, and when it's available, you'll be called off of that list. Alameda County will coordinate with the agency to let them know this person is matched to that bed, and the agency will contact that person to do an intake. It's the same for transitional housing, and rapid rehousing, where you have to qualify based off of your CES score, and then you get matched to the bed.
So there's multiple touch points at this 211, it's not just one person holding it.
No, it's not just one person holding it. I don't know if anyone else wants to add anything.
I'll say one thing.
Relative to HUD, there was a special NOFO a couple years ago now, unsheltered NOFO.
2022.
That obviously we submitted for as a local COC and then got a variety of awards. One of those was, to your point, around unstructured environments, of which I mean like just folks that are out in unsheltered settings. There was not a conversion to that state money, but there was a HUD one-timer specifically for unsheltered projects. And we did submit an opportunity to create not just virtual 211, not just in-person housing resource centers, but a mobile access point team where now there will be folks with coordinated entry access embedded, I'm looking at Lynette, in the street health teams that are out there doing the work too, to be able to do coordinated entry assessments and connect people in the field, not just virtually and in in-person settings. But other than that, I mean, you know.
Deidre, did you have a question?
Well, I think you handed me the
Oh,
mic.
sorry.
Okay, thanks. So that's great to hear. There are housing resource centers, Jonathan, for transitional age youth, for people fleeing intimate partner violence, and for across Alameda County. But the fastest growing sector of the unhoused community is, say it with me, seniors. And there's no dedicated housing resource center, Jonathan, for seniors. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have a Zoom question, and I know Deidre has a question, so let's, I don't know how to manage this.
Hi, hello? My name is Pam. I work for 211 Alameda County. I just wanted to make a little clarification on the coordinated entry system for 211's perspective. What we have is a small group of shelters, maybe 3 or 4 that we can actually refer to, but the rest of the bulk of the shelter beds are under the CES's purview and their authority. So when 211 when you get a call from 211, we basically refer them to the Housing Resource Center, and then they will help them either with shelter or whatever they have resources. But the one thing we need, I think the need to know in as a community right now, the resources are so scarce that for us, a 211, we might have 2 or 3 shelter beds a day that are become available for the hundreds of people that call us. And also, it takes a long time for people, once they get into coordinated entry, to get a place. It can take at least a year to get a permanent supportive housing if they can get that, depending upon their own vulnerabilities and what their scores are. So the higher they are, the worse off they are, the quicker they'll get something. But it leaves a lot of folks out in the street, and that's one of our biggest problems. Thanks for listening.
Is it my turn again? I know you guys are really sick of me, but you know what? This is my opportunity. Oh, you said you're not? Okay, now, what I want to say, if you're looking for a shelter bed for St. Vincent de Paul, if you speak out against the condition, just know that your shelter bed will be in the park across the street from the Greyhound bus station. That's where Mr. Marcel, I'm gonna stand up on this, Mr. Marcel Lloyd sent me after I volunteered for 8 months there. I did not get a one-way bus ticket, and because I spoke out about us not having showers for 18 days when COVID hit. Then they got upset with me and they told me that I no longer had a reservation there, even though I volunteered making hygiene bags and, starting the wash machines for them and dust mopping and mopping and doing all this stuff. Just know that if you speak out, you won't even have a shelter bed. You'll have a park bench across the street from Greyhound bus station. So I cast a no vote for him today. I'm just letting you guys know what my experience, but I can't tell my whole story because I only get 2 minutes. His name is Marcel Lloyd. Wait, vote no.
What's up? I'm already loud enough. But I wanted to say, as far as 211 goes, and no disrespect to 211 at all, but if we're on the ground floor and we're effectively navigating and caring about our community, we're gonna have all these resources. Like I send people to 211 if they need transportation and certain things and but other than that, it's really about the advocating for the community and actually building those relationships to humanize the experience, other than just saying like, oh, just connect this and ask for this specific resource. You know what I mean? You are the resource, the person that you never met yet has been trusting you to provide that service. So be out there providing that service, I'll say this last thing and I'll shut up because it's really not really good. Like, it's like, at nations, right? You can mess up an order of fries and they'll just do a new order, but you can't mess with a human's life like that. It's a whole different ballgame.
So I'm a bit confused about CES being 102 HMIS. And there's been some allusion to the criteria or the score. What are the line item scores that you have to pass for CES? Because, for instance, if you've been living in sheds and homeless for 10 years and you wonder why you're not moving on HMIS, it might be because you have a low score. So, could you elaborate on the scoring system?
Thank you for the question. So the assessment that I'm sure many folks here are familiar with is a locally generated assessment. Many communities, as I'm sure folks have heard here, historically when coordinated entry was implemented by HUD as a mandate to local communities in like 2017-ish. The DI-SPDAT was a widely used tool that was created by an agency called Work. We have never used that tool locally. That tool has been found to contribute to racial disparities in outcomes and scoring. We've never used it, thankfully. So we've had a local tool that's been created and recreated multiple times here, but it's essentially a comprehensive assessment of all those questions that speak to physical vulnerabilities, speak to life experience, length of homelessness. It is invariably invasive because it's asking those questions that are very personal, and in that way it can feel understandably very uncomfortable. Like, hi, nice to meet you. Oh, you need a housing resource? Let me ask you a lot of intimate, questions about your vulnerabilities. So that's, and the score is of course proprietary in the sense that that's not shared publicly, so that folks can be honest about their actual experience versus it becoming a system to gain, right? Which is totally natural to want to do. And it's flawed, right, as a system. One of the things I want to say, and I would have said this before I worked for the county, when I was a provider just as frustrated about doing assessments. I think that there is a puzzle we get into here where we get frustrated at the lack of housing and resources and how vulnerable folks have to be to get it, right? Which is a real problem in our systems for sure. And we focus on coordinated entry as if the problem is the filter that we have to use versus the lack of resources to disperse. So I just want to name that as like a classic structural problem, is we sometimes focus on the filter we have to use that we only got 100 beds to get out, that's coordinated entry, and sort of really hyper-focus on that, and that's important, we need to analyze it, but the problem is the structure of the lack of housing to connect folks through coordinated entry. So I just want to name that as a thing as we rightly get critical about it. Let's make sure we're doing the advocacy and naming the structural problem, which is the severe scarcity of resources, such that we have to do the assessment and prioritization that we do. So just that.
Thank you, Jonathan, for pointing that out. Just to piggyback on Jonathan, for us providers, if some funding will be allocated towards CES and HMIS, it's very important to educate the providers as well how to effectively assess a partner, because I say partner, everybody says clients. At VAX we say partners, but I'm not here as VAX, I'm here as a person with lived experience. So, I mean VAX too, but really for PWLE, that's where my heart is today and right now. So, I think what's most important for the providers and the process in the structural information that Jonathan provides is that sometimes it gets so mechanical because there's a scarcity of space or time. Folks become mechanical, providers get burnt out, right? They get burnt out. Providers are just like, there's no eye contact, there's no relationship in response in the rapport. So I think it's really important to understand what goes behind when we're assessing too. There's been some folks that come in and refuse to say they have HIV. And then as we're continuously following up with them and building that relationship, and as they come into the resource centers, but there was something that really touched me last night that I was up all night thinking about, which is a scarcity in ageism for our seniors. I'm a senior, I'm AARP plus. I don't look like it, thank God. But I'm speaking on behalf of our seniors who have limited resources, because I really didn't want to say anything. I really am here to observe and, just really, really ponder the services needed. And I'll be quiet after a while, but they say out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. If we have a scarcity with our seniors that the resources are unable to be provided to them because they don't have transportation to get to the housing resource centers, there's a scarcity to where I get calls every day, all day, on my personal phone and my work phone. JC, I can't get there because I'm in a wheelchair. I don't have bus fare. If we can provide resources and funding to get where's the scarcity? I can't get there. Well, let's get to them. Let's increase outreach, right? It's important. I worked on the ground when they did the first pilot for Wood Street. Some of the folks here, and I'm so glad to see them here advocating, but for coordinated entry, it's not the assessment. It is the assessment, but I think we should really invest in our assessors on how to effectively do an assessment, right? Not just do it because you're just clicking boxes and stuff. Capture the information on racial equity as well. A lot of folks are afraid to speak up on their vulnerability. I was so afraid to talk about my DV. I was living in the car. I'm sharing my experience about some of the information I provided and how a social worker treated me when I told her I had cancer. And she automatically assumed that I was on Section 8. I'm in here with cancer fighting to get somewhere to stay. So forgive me for my transparency, but this is the same story that I shared in the same room with Jonathan about 4 to 6 years ago, I believe. So again, if we can invest in our staff that are burnt out, scarcity with resources to help us help them. I'm not in this work, of course, we all want to get paid, but I'm in here because I made a commitment to say, if you heal me, I will serve you. And I think you all know what I'm talking about. COVID, cancer, I really think about the seniors because they call me so much, 8 o'clock, 7 in the morning. I can't get to the Housing Resource Center. So if we can get out there to do their assessments for them and effectively do it, and don't bring the stuff do not bring whatever you have going on into the door or into the assessment, let's think about our partners. Let's think about them and how they need the resources to get housed. I would never put my partner in a place I wouldn't put my mom. Sorry I took up all this time, but this has just been boiling in my stomach. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to continue with the presentation. The presentation is not over yet, so we're gonna let Kate continue with her slides. And then if we have time after, which I believe we will, then we'll take more questions and comments then. Thank you.
Okay, so, actually, we have a few more things, and this is actually rolling into the discussion we're hoping to have, which is, so we're gonna do the NOFO again in 2 years, so we have a lot of time to do some planning, and this is the beginning of that planning process. So typically in the spring or summer, after we submit the NOFO, we would start planning for the next round. So in 2024, we actually convened a new group, which was the year-round NOFO work group that started planning in February of 2024. And so that group could be reconvened, but we get an extra year. So we have the opportunity for more thorough review of our processes, and we could change things up. A lot of times we don't change it up too much from one year to the next because there isn't time to think about it. So for renewal projects, which are the projects that already exist that are getting funding, that we've been talking about, we are required to evaluate their performance. So we have to look at, like, are these projects doing a good job? Including objective ways of trying to think about performance, measuring their performance. So for example, if you have a housing project, what percentage of people actually secured housing? What percentage of people actually increased their income? And then HUD also requires us to look at how projects take steps to advance spatial equity. And they also encourage continuums of care to look at low-performing projects and consider whether to reduce their funding and give that to new projects. And then we're also required to do some ongoing monitoring, including looking at whether projects are aligned to Housing First and other kinds of best practices. And so these are things we've looked at in 2024 and we've looked at in the past. So we've always looked at, as I mentioned, performance measures. So we look at a lot of data from the projects to see how well they're doing. This year we looked at whether they have good policies and practices around making it easy to access them, which is everyone's been talking about access issues, and whether they have the right services in place to serve people and to meet the needs of the people who are participating in the project. We looked at steps they're taking to advance racial equity. We looked at whether they're involving people with experience in the decision-making processes of the project. And then we looked at some sort of more technical things like, do they do good grants management and get their reports in on time? Are they spending all the money? And then we look a little bit at organizational capacity. So those are the things we've typically looked at, but it's not everything that one could look at in terms of trying to evaluate whether projects are doing a good job. So the question we have for you all to think about, and I think is going to be our first little breakout question, is we can rethink how to evaluate existing projects. We can't completely throw out the way we've been doing it because some of it is HUD mandated, but we can rethink it. So we can think about what factors we're evaluating, how we measure them, what do we want projects to accomplish, And then how do we look at projects on a year-round basis and not just in the context of the NOFO? So I think I'm gonna stop there, and we have a question up on the board. I don't know, how much time do you wanna give people?
Maybe 5 minutes or so, and then we'll ask people to report out.
And do we wanna just have folks stay in their tables and talk to each other? Because we have a few kind of smaller groups. Yeah, so if folks are in a table with just one person, you might wanna like figure out a way to move to a table with a couple other people so you can talk to them. But we want you to just think about knowing what you know about the existing funding, which basically is for almost all of the housing programs in Alameda County that serve people experiencing homelessness. And what would you wanna know if you were trying to figure out, if you had 10 projects in front of you, you wanted to figure out if they're all doing a good job and should we refund them? Or if some of them are not doing a great job, we don't wanna refund them? What are some factors you wanna know about? So take 5 or 10 minutes to discuss, and then we'll pass the mic around. No, most of it goes to like literally. She can go for the edge.
And then that might. Alright, well, welcome to the table, David. Family. Huh? Oh, we were just talking about the different, you talking about the relationships.
Yeah, so they can do some discussion, but would not like that. I don't know.
Right now, that's that has to be she works with them on like, okay, how do we maintain the house? Like maintaining these four walls of security, accessibility, and Ideas and how we have
I'm not very good at that.
Hi everyone, how are we doing? Sounds like conversations are somewhat starting to wrap up. Should we give it another minute?
And they'll get the service, but then they don't right? That doesn't mean that it's a successful program. It means the person that's right person at the time is supposed to Right, well, this, we have that integrated interest program, right? Okay, so this person can do this, do we have, what other kind of funding, what kind of other programs this organization have access to address those needs? Not ready for that specific, you know what I mean? So this, we gotta have different pathways paved out for those that aren't ready as much as those that are ready, you know? Sometimes it's just, it takes certain words to shift.
Okay, I think we're gonna start wrapping up our conversations. Do we have a table who'd like to stand up and share what they figured out, what suggestions y'all have? Somebody raise your hand if you wanna speak for your table. I'm gonna bring the conversation back to the rest of the room. Mo's making eye contact. All right, Mo, you're next. Thank you, Mo. And then we'll do next table in the back. Okay, thank you, Mo. And wait, do we have a question? Okay. All right, what? I got Mo first and then we'll come back over to this other question.
Yeah, so we had a good conversation about what might be the outcome of these two suggestions, but they were centered around evaluation and monitoring, and one would be to have resident participation surveys should be part of the evaluation. And I know that we do monitoring, but I don't know if that specific recommendation is part of the monitoring. And the other one is measuring the resident open communication with management as a part of the evaluation, so that, you know, management, to know that management is, that there's a line of communication between residents and management in all situations, and whether that's effective and solve problems. So those were our two main ones, but we had a lot of discussions about what they might bring out.
All right, thank you, table one. I'm gonna come back around and we'll do the next table. Yeah, okay, who wants to share from over here? Shatay?
We have a really good group. So some of the things that they named here was evaluating staffing structures and the ability to serve members. Also wanting to measure retention of the staff. This says a lot about the organization. They want to evaluate pay offered as part of the evaluation process and the service provision overall. They want to measure supporting keeping people housed. And then also have a support around the risk of eviction or and housing stability and the organization's ability to remedy that. They also talked about a lot of organizations are doing things outside of the contract, so and offering additional services, but that doesn't get weighted. So space to talk about that. They also talked about member retention for the folks who are living in the buildings. They talked about technical assistance up front for new organizations who are interested in the NOFO process. Also instituting a response about grievance and appeals. So if you didn't get awarded dollars, why weren't you awarding those dollars, and how can you create change for the future? Also, customer service weighted needs to be weighted as well. We do persons with lived experience survey results. We're really wanting to amplify places of health equity or even why something wasn't accomplished, and having a space to talk about that openly. And then lastly, which should have been our number one, is incorporating people with lived experience at the table, but not just at the table, but having power to change the system.
Yeah. So, Shatay, I hope you, can you?
Good morning, Marisol Rodriguez Sanchez, she, her pronouns. So our table talked about just going back to having folks with lived experience at the table, definitely having clients creating the evaluation factors, with our youth homelessness demonstration program. On that project requires a quality improvement process that includes, clients, providers, county reps, and our HUD technical assistant to work together to develop like the surveys. So it's funny, so yesterday we're in space creating the coordinated entry surveys, and one of the pieces that the youth pointed out was like, how about like, was the person nice when I walked into the building? So just those pieces like huge pieces, those are the humanizing pieces, right? Those are the type of questions we want to ensure that we add to our evaluation tools, and also know that like HMIS will, if we extract data from there, that's one layer of data, right, that paints a certain picture, but complemented by surveys and focus groups that are facilitated by my clients in collaboration with folks so that they feel safe enough to be real, right, and share what really needs to be evaluated or changed. So folks with lived experience at the table creating those questions to evaluate the impact of the program. They know if it's going well or not. And interpreting the data as well, so not just like, we came up with a question, now it goes to this, behind the scenes room, but they're at the table interpreting the data and making the recommendations as well.
Thank you so much. We got 2 more tables, so over here, and then we'll do this one, and I'll just leave this with you, so I don't have to walk all over the place.
Oh, my son, right now? So really, they really kind of like landed on it, and then, they elaborate, kind of put more on it, but I will say, like, when evaluating organizations on the funding, and stuff like that, it's really about not even just the success rates, because there's people that come in ready, you might have a really good program and stuff that's really effective for the individual that's ready for that, but then also talking to the people that have gone through the program but we're really ready for the next step, because then those things right there are where the funding needs to be as well. There's the things that need to be addressed for the individual and how to get that there, how to express that love, and plant those seeds for the people that didn't quite make it because they weren't ready, right? Because we don't want to leave them behind either. And then I forgot. But that's what I have. And but I was so in tune with what they were saying over there because they really kind of nailed it. And then everything else is just, it's a really good group here. I love it. All right.
We're gonna share. One thing that we were talking about was how many barriers there are to the systems for people to access them. And that one of the problems is a scarcity of resources. So there aren't enough staff, they're not trained enough, and it's causing people to be unable to access meaningful assessments. So we're talking about things being fully resourced to eliminate some of the barriers. And then I'm gonna
Ditto, no. Thank you, Shatay. Shatay really, I think her name is Shatay, yeah? Oh, the table, our neighbors over there, they really gave, the Shatable. They really gave a very full scope of, really dove into a lot of the barriers and recommendations, but also, don't get me, and if there's anybody watching me, know that I'm saying this with intent from the heart, to my head, not my heart. Let's just be honest, some of the agencies need to be accountable in leadership about what service delivery looks like. What service delivery looks like. I've been on the other side of the phone where, I'm like, you're experiencing this? Oh my geez. Okay, but it's not like I'm gonna hand you off. Let's do what we can on the ground while I have you, or while we have you, to effectively get the information that you need. And I see that a lot. I'm not gonna name it out, I'm just gonna name it. That it starts from here, in any situation, no matter where you're at, the bank, the doctors, the church, the school. It starts from here, and it needs to be intentional. Well, how can it be intentional? By providing, investing in the teams and the staff. And if this is not the work for you, bounce. If this is not the work for you, bounce. I'm doing this 25 years plus, and I'll never forget the one thing that I loved about this job so much, don't kill me, Nick, is when we used to do the BNL with the city of Oakland, and that list was amazing because it was consistent. The list was consistent on how we can get folks serviced and housed. And we were charged to say, okay, team that does outreach, go find them. Their name is up. So again, it starts from here, providing resource and intent on how to effectively, provide service delivery. I hope I didn't overkill, but did I say it right, team?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Jose, we have one more, we're doing another comment from this table, and then we need to go to the Zoom room, which also has, okay. Zoom room, you are up, if you could unmute and tell us what you found. Okay, we're gonna give him some extra time. Are they with us?
Are we going to the Zoom room?
Yes, we're asking Zoom if you could report out, what are your ideas for evaluation?
Sure. This is Colleen with Alameda County Health, or Alameda County Health, Housing and Homelessness Services. We talked about a few things. So one thing was sort of looking beyond just like the numbers that might be in HMIS for things like permanent supportive housing and looking at like maintenance and repairs and the state of facilities. And then also another thing that was brought up in the group was getting feedback from the people receiving services. So like getting feedback from participants in different programs. And then one other thing was sort of like zooming out from just the NOFO and maybe taking the time to really revisit the system performance measures that our COC has that are, in our written standards and otherwise, and kind of making sure that there's an agreement across the COC, but also hopefully across some of the funding organizations within the COC, that these are the system performance measures for each different type of housing intervention, so that there's more consistency. And also, I think some of that idea is to remove a little bit of the kind of administrative burden from CBOs, because if they have the same performance measures and they know how they're going to be tracked, et cetera, and we all sort of like use that when we contract, that will make it easier for them to report rather than having kind of different measures, because we often have, multiple funders funding one program. So we talked about sort of taking the opportunity to zoom out from NOFO and look at system performance measures and then utilize those system performance measures as, one of the things that we look at for the next NOFO as well.
Great, thank you, Colleen. We have about 10 minutes left for this agenda item, and we don't want to do one more question. So we're going to go ahead and ask you that question, which is...
This will be faster.
Yeah, okay.
And I think, I don't have my mic, sorry. Can folks hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The question is, how can we better support new project applicants? Is that right?
So it did come up from one of the tables already, I think, which is that this year we submitted 50 unique projects, but those 50 projects came from probably about 15 organizations. So there's a limited number of organizations that get COC funding, and I think there's been, over the years, a lot of interest in trying to bring new organizations into the process. We've done a lot of different things to try and, do outreach to and provide TA to new applicants. We did get a bunch of new applicants this year, but I think we're interested in hearing what are some ways to do more to support organizations to apply for and successfully secure COC funding.
Okay, so you all have 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
And we won't have enough time for every table to report out, but we will be taking notes. We're taking sticky note feedback. So if y'all can help us yourself 5 minutes.
In terms of organization, how it works, who often organizations, that's what I'm doing, I'm trying to share things that they don't have to. They It doesn't mean that you work, right? It means you have infrastructure. Right? Sometimes it's organizations want to work, but doesn't have infrastructure. And little capacity. So I think it's not. We want to do whatever.
So we don't. Well, okay, so that is something that we should talk about because we are trying to expand our organization. So I do know that as far as the organization and expansion,
Are they already?
we have different programs help with everything else along with part of getting them out. We can just have effective intense we have intense case management at our organization. These people and actually like that place that and everything like this. Mental health services, all that stuff goes right? And I guess it'll be along the lines of I mean, to help like the proposal, it would be like, it would be obviously client centric, right? Because that's what this is all about. It's about the client. It's not just getting out by having a program that we have right now for people that maintain houses. You know, and getting out but having those are opportunities of having them for things that are right. So how would it, I guess taking that part. Yes. I mean, I don't know. I'm still like, I mean, I mean, like, that's what I'm still learning. That's what I'm actually here for at the same time. So learning more about this so we can be more effective for the services. So,
That's really good.
Yeah.
They get some staff.
Well, no.
I have no experience with that. That's why I'm saying. So, like, that's what I mean. You know what I mean? I can get the concept of it, and if I understood the outline of it, whatnot, then I would be able to. But you know what I'm saying?
All right, I know this is really fast, but we're trying to wrap it up and get lunch. Lunch is ready for us. So I'm gonna take maybe 2 volunteers to share, and I'm gonna encourage everyone else to please write it down. We have sticky notes. We want to collect your thoughts today. So I got 1 volunteer in the back for a comment. Okay, I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 comments.
Are we starting? Okay. So our group, oh, 1, 2, 3, all eyes on me. There we go. Clap your hands. Okay. So what our table discussed was technical assistance campaign prior to opening to the NOFO period, where we would provide organizations who don't necessarily understand the procedures. We would provide them with like a checklist or a toolkit. And then we would also pair these organizations that don't have such expertise with like a buddy system with other primary providers or subcontractors. And then we would have, okay, so this is what we discussed. Basically, for example, Shantae's on the racial equity committee. So we would review, because she's seen trends where, why are these applicants always getting basically not the funding that they should get, or basically getting denied? So what she would do was, the racial equity committee would be kind of like an oversight committee where they would review the denied applications, because maybe, again, it goes back to maybe they don't understand how to fill out the applications, maybe they don't understand how to capture data. So it would help these type of inexperienced organizations offering them help, because like this young lady stated, like her organization, for example, they could reach, even though she may be inexperienced on how to apply, they could reach more people if she would know how to apply for the applications, because she has lived experience. So she's saying, I can go out into the community and actually be more beneficial, because this community is trusting of me. I understand and know how to navigate the system. And me personally, I think that would be a more equitable way across the board for others who don't always have that opportunity to apply.
All right.
Okay, this is gonna be the last one because we're going over time. And then we'll be able to go for lunch. Last comment?
So we talked about the need to ask providers, what have you seen in your experience, the last 5 years or so, of what's worked well, what hasn't, and how have you adjusted your practices based on what you see that works well. And we also talked about needing to work with clients who are entering rapid rehousing, so that they really have a good understanding of what that means, so that they know this is not Section 8, this is a time-limited housing assistance program. And so really making sure that we're getting the right folks into the right programs, so that they're not just getting dropped from the program and not understanding why after 18 months. Is there anything I missed?
And number 3, as housing providers, we have to keep in mind that we are already housed. We already live in the neighborhoods we're gonna live in. We already live where the people we're gonna live in. That is our housing. So when we offer the opportunities and the options to people, it's up to them what they want to choose and what they don't want to choose, where they want to live and where they don't want to live. I remember having a client, just real quick, and I was a landlord liaison, so I was having a meeting. She's a veteran with SSVF, VASH, don't make me tell you what those veterans do. Veterans housing rep, and we were talking over her, and I was like, wait a minute, hold on, stop. Where do you want to live? What neighborhood do you want to live? How many rooms do you want? How big of a living room do you big do you want your kitchen to be? Do you want a laundry room in there? Do you want do you want to go to the room? What do you want in your neighborhood? You want to park across the street, down the street? You want a community center across the street, down the street, around the block? You want to be able to get to the store by foot or by car? When you have an emergency, how far do you want to be from the fire? You know, where do you want to live? My job is to help you, not just put you somewhere. And that's what we have to keep in mind every time we have these opportunities, even the PSH matches. I sit and I talk to them in detail. And when they explain to me why they don't want to live somewhere, I make sure to put that note in there. This is why they don't want to live. This is why they don't want this. This is why they don't want this. So that it's understood that not to continue to send those to me for this person, because that's not what they want. So let's focus on what they want and where they want to live, so that we can ensure that people remain how permanently, because without that, I would move too. Wouldn't you?
Yes. Now, I appreciate what you just said, because I was penalized for telling them where I wanted to stay. I'm from Albany of over 40 years, and I wanted to go back that way. Instead, I was told that there's a housing match for you in Livermore. There's a housing match for you near the Fruitvale BART station. I was kicked out, I was almost thrown out in the rain by an organization, Operation Dignity, Operation I Don't Give a Damn, that's what I call it, because I didn't want to live in Livermore. I fought tooth and nail, I know where I want to live. So I appreciate you asking them, where do you want to stay? Now, I'm gonna really try to be through for today. That's something else.
All right, I got a couple of quick announcements here.